Good morning, good
Morning, Judy.
afternoon, whatever time it is when you're watching this. This is take two of not take two, but the second attempt at our recordings for today. So you know what? We're just showing you how it is: resilience, flexibility, pivoting, figuring stuff out, which is really what we're talking about today. And especially, my guest Jason Roberts here. We're talking about creating remarkable resilience, and he and I both work with a lot of leaders and high achievers and elite personalities, and so we're really wanting to kind of bring some more information. Not that you need any more information, but we want to give you some information that you can implement in a way that will really help you help your, whether you're leading your family, whether you're leading your community, whether you're leading a team, whether you're leading, Jason will talk to you more about that. So, and just really quickly, this is a series, right? We've had a couple of different, videos, and they'll be posted around, so you'll be able to find them. But, this series came about, I was actually swimming in my pool and I was like, I want to do a workshop with some amazing people about remarkable resilience, about creating remarkable resilience, because we need to create it in times when we don't have a crisis so that we can handle the crisis in our life. So we need to have some tools, we need to have some skills, we need to have some things in place, in order to help us through that. So, I'm kind of using the metaphor of like the analogy of a recipe, like a recipe box, right? You've got your recipe cards in there, and you're like, oh, I really love this recipe and I love this one, but I don't like mushrooms, so I'm not making mine with mushrooms. Like, I'm not doing that. And I don't eat gluten and dairy, so I'm not putting that in there. And then we're kind of creating like, a recipe file of how we can, what we can pick and choose works for us, for our nervous system, for our way of life, for our, who the people we're leading, and, what calms us, what gives us energy, and all that kind of stuff. So that's really what this is about. And I just brought in experts that I thought would bring some awesome value and some tools and wisdom. And, we were just talking before we went on, but it's like our inboxes with, this video, whenever you're watching it, is happening during the pandemic. And we are in May of 2020. And, we're getting inundated with, the 5 ways to survive COVID, and the 17 things you need to do to calm, to de-stress, and the 4 things for self-care, and the, like, right there. And we're either trying all of them or none of them, or we're feeling overwhelmed, or we do try them and then they don't work for us. Maybe you're trying some mindfulness, maybe you're trying some meditation, maybe you're trying some yoga online, and you're like, this is not working for me. Like, and then you start judging yourself, and none of that is helpful either. So we're just, again, we are bringing you like more, yes, we are here bringing you some tools and information, but what we really want is for you to take some of this and try it out like you're trying on pants. Like, I don't know, do these pants fit? Do I like how these pants feel? Do they make me feel good? Or like, no, do I need to put them back on the rack? Right? So that's what we got going on. So I have my awesome friend and colleague and guest is Jason Roberts, and I'm gonna let him tell you all about himself. Because it's just, he's the expert on himself, just like you are the expert on you, right? And that's why taking all of this stuff is great, but what might work for Jason might not actually work for me, or might not work for, somebody else, but there's parts, but there's still value in the concepts that we're teaching. There's still, the value is coming from that these things are based in psychology, they're based in science, they're based in, research, experience, they're based in all of it, right? So we're gonna bring you all kinds of stuff. All right. So
thanks,
Jason.
Coach Judy. I appreciate that so much. About the only thing I'm an expert in is myself, and I still wonder about that oftentimes. But I appreciate
we're an expert in our own experience.
There we go. That's about it. That's about right. So I really do appreciate you having me here today, and I just want to make sure that everybody listening understands that this this is unquestionably a kind of an important thing for me to do, because, you know, one of the things that I've defined as a purpose of my life is to find ways to add value to other people based on the value that's been added to me with and through other people. So I'm really, really happy. Coach Judy, I appreciate you so much being able to reach out and get in touch with me and ask me to be part of this group, because it really is an important thing in my life, and it really is part of my purpose statement. So I'm going to warn you ahead of time that I've got some notes. So I've taken some notes here, and if I look down, it's not because I'm checking my phone. That's over here to the side, but I want to make sure that I'm giving you the best version of the thoughts that I've had. And for me, that works best to kind of follow a few notes. So, so really though, thank you very much for being part of this. You know, when you invited me to join you, I was thinking through, like, what are the things, you know, I teach a lot of lessons on leadership. And before I get into that, let me just give you a 10-second or 30-second background on me. You probably could tell from the short hair, I'm not just trying to cover up the gray on the sides, but I am in the military. I'm in the United States Air Force. I'm a lieutenant colonel, stationed at the Jacksonville Air National Guard unit, and I'm there full time. So I am a leader in the military. Interesting. I always think about that, and one of the questions I always get are you kind of almost get an eye, kind of an eye wink on that, because a lot of times people think that when you're a leader in the military, well, that's kind of easy because you just order people to do things, right? I mean, isn't there kind of a presupposition with that? Well, here's the thing that I've learned. You know, I kind of actually thought that when I was a young kid. Well, it'll be easy to be a leader, and, you know, I'll just have a higher rank, and then people will have to listen to me.
Tell everybody what to do.
Yeah. But let me tell you this: you don't lead you don't order people into contact. You lead people into combat. So you can't order somebody to put their own life in danger. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So leadership is something that is really valuable to me, because and how really critical it is, not only in my job, but in our own lives. So we're going to talk a lot about leadership today, because that's definitely something that's important to me. One of the things I thought about talking about was I have a lesson that I teach on I am. Like, so it's this concept of an I am statement. You know, and the words I am are interesting, more so because of the words and the value that people place on the words that follow them. So I am, and whenever you say that in your own mind, you think about the words that follow there. And that's really an indicator. You know, when we talk about being an expert on ourselves, when you say the words I am to yourself, whatever follows that is a really important indicator of kind of how you are. So I was going to talk about that. And I thought, you know, I mean, that's a great lesson. Let me just say, it really is a great lesson. Yeah. But I think right now, I think what we need to focus on is this idea of what's going on with this crisis that we're in the middle of, because it is a crisis. It doesn't matter to me what your lean is, left or right, on the on how really horrible it is, or how over dramatized it is, because there's a huge spectrum out there right now. But as a society, really as a global society, we're in the middle of a crisis. So that's what I want to share with you today. I want to share with you today a new program that I'm getting ready to offer. And it's a lesson. It's like a multi-course program on leading through crisis. Now, this isn't a sales pitch or anything like that, because that entire program is it's being all offered for free. So it's all just a matter of me trying to help add value to people. So what I've done is today, I'm going to kind of give you a sneak peek of what the leading through crisis curriculum is going to be in this program that I'm getting ready to launch. So it's called Leading Through Crisis. And before I start, I want to hit these two really important points. And the first one is leading. So some people hear that word and they immediately turn around and they log out, they walk to the door, because they think of themselves, back to the I am statement, they don't see themselves as I am a leader. Right. I want to prove to you that that's not right, and that in fact you're wrong, that you are a leader. So here's how I want to do this. Just right now, take a few seconds, and in your mind's eye, you know, close your eyes if you need to, and with me right now, just take a few seconds and imagine the person in your life who has had the greatest influence on you. So who in your background and in your past has helped you to go further, faster, or become even better than you thought you could be. So picture that. Really seriously, take a pic. I'm going to pause for a second. Just in your mind, picture that person. Just picture that person. And so when you have that person in your mind, I want you to ask yourself, is that person a mother? Is it a brother, a sister, a father? Is it a neighbor, a teacher? Is it just somebody from your church or your community organization that you were a part of? See, here's the thing. When I do this in groups of, in rooms with 20 or more people in it, there's always one or two that raise their hand and say, no, it was a boss of mine. But most of the time, the person who's had the biggest influence in your life and in my life, it's not a boss. It's not somebody who has a title or a position that had the greatest influence on us. It's the neighbor or the mom or the friend that's done that for us. So I'm part of the John Maxwell team. And one of the things that John Maxwell, and I'm so fortunate to have him as a mentor that, I get to actually interface with on a couple of times a year. One of the things that John Maxwell teaches is that leadership is influence, right? Nothing more and nothing less.
Yep. And
so I'm here to tell you that if you don't think you're a leader, you are, because you're influencing the people around you right now, today. And so I just want to make sure that's really clear. You're a leader, and leading through crisis is totally applicable to you. So that's the first point. The second point in leading through crisis that I want to make is that the word through is purposefully chosen, right? Leading into crisis is definitely not the lesson that I because that's something that people have figured out how to do on their own. They don't know how to lead into crisis. So definitely not what we want to provide. And leading out of crisis is actually kind of an easier process as well, because you think about that. If you jump into a broken organization, or you've hit rock bottom in some situation that you're in, recognizing where you're at, you have a really clear picture of exactly what's gone wrong and where to go and how to make it better and different. So leading out of crisis is kind of a little bit easier too, but leading through crisis is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard. And I want you to know that we're all in this feeling together. Like, this is hard for us. Because leading through crisis, it means that what you were just doing to successfully lead before, and remember, when I say lead, I don't mean just in an organization where you have some position or title. What I really mean is like leading your family, or leading your church group, or leading your HRO, HOA organization, or whatever.
Leading yourself.
Yeah, leading yourself. Here's what leading through crisis looks like. Whatever we're doing is working, it's working. Suddenly something changes dramatically. And then, it's all kinds of things. So you find yourself suddenly, you're, what you were doing doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work anymore because now we're teleworking maybe. Or maybe your business is forced to close. And clearly whatever you were doing to lead before this doesn't work anymore. Or maybe suddenly you're a 1st, 5th, and 11th grade teacher at home. And if you weren't doing that before, that's a change that's really difficult. So all kinds of things have changed, and it's suddenly different. And so what you were doing no longer works. So what do you do? So what this is what I want to talk with you about. So what do we do when that's the case? And I'm going to tell you, and Coach Judy is just so good that she just mentioned it, is that it all starts with self-leadership. So the leading through crisis, kind of lesson program that I'm getting ready to launch is all about recognizing the need to work first, hardest, and longest on ourselves. So this whole program is designed to help you reach up and grab that oxygen mask that drops from the plane and put it on your face first. Because when you're able to do that, then you're able to help and be the person and be the leader to the other people around you that you need to be. So, leading through crisis, it is basically a program that just helps us by giving us tips, techniques, and tricks. And in Coach Judy, in your kind of explanation, it's really helping us to identify some of the ingredients, the tools, and the equipment that we have available for the recipe that we're trying to make. So,
Right.
so that's what this Leading Through Crisis course is all about. And it's going to give you tips and techniques that aren't just applicable to a business. In fact, they surely aren't, because this really is about self-leadership. So it's stuff that's applicable to you personally, but also any other organization or group that you're a part of, you're a leader in. And I'll tell you, if you have a family, then you're the leader in your family. So this is applicable in that way too.
Yeah,
Oh.
I love it. I love, you know,
Go ahead,
I love
Judy.
all of it. You know, that I have a Facebook group called the Self-Leadership School. I am all about self-leadership because, like you just said, it's ultimately, you know, when I look back at my life, you know, I would have, had I really taken better care of myself, led myself first, but I would have been a better wife, a better mom, I mean, I was a good woman doing good work in the world, and a better nurse, a better ministry work, all of the things, but a better coach. But because I, you know, had some old things that I hadn't really worked on, or, you know, I didn't work enough on, right? And so, you know, that is where we can get tripped up in this trying to lead other people, because we're not feeling authentic in our own leadership, right? In leading ourselves and all of that, because we had to, you know, work on some things. But what I really love is what you're talking about is this concept that, you know, what you said was that, like, leadership is influence, and leadership, like, we're always leading someone, even if you're just leading yourself. But where are you leading them to? Right. And it goes back to, like, I always felt like I feel like I was a good, really great leader because I was just raising other people up, right? I was raising more leaders. You kind of alluded to that before, that, like, you know, we're not telling other people really what to do. We're helping them lead themselves so that they too can become better leaders.
Yeah, and your early point about that, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I mean, I can tell you that there's things today that I'm going to talk about that I've picked out of here because I feel like it meant something to me. But there's other things that you're going to get out of what I'm talking about, and Coach Judy, what you're talking about, for the folks that are listening, that is going to be nothing that is really notable to you or I, but is going to absolutely trigger something in their minds. And that's the benefit of these kinds of groups, is that it's open communication about a topic that that we just don't necessarily spend enough time on. So, because it, you know, and society kind of teaches us that, doesn't it? I mean, where do you see people getting recognition, whether it be through some community award or, you know, some school award or anything like that, for just being really good at working on yourself? You know, we just societally, we don't do that.
Well, because because we're selfish. If you're taking care of yourself, if you're working on yourself, we're selfish. And I'm going to just speak for 1 second on women in general. You know, have a really hard time of putting themselves, like, we're never going to put ourselves above our children. We're never going to put ourselves above our spouse, probably. And even our business, like, even it's really challenging to put yourself above your business, right? And so, you know, I'm just speaking for, I mean, men struggle with this too in their own way. But for sure, women, like, that's just how in our DNA, how we were, like, it's just who we are. Like, we're going to nurture and we're going to protect and we're going to do all that. But that being said, that when we realize that, like, we're not even, forget about being last on the list. Like, okay, you don't even have to put yourself first on the list. You just got to get on the list.
That's right. Yeah.
You got to be on the list somewhere for some kind of, you know, self-awareness, self-care, self-compassion, somewhere in there. You know, because otherwise it's like, right. And then the reality is that you also aren't teaching your children or the people you're leading how to do it. And I think this is why we have a lot of burnout and breakdown, is because people are leading, but they're not implementing what we're talking about here, which is, it's more than self-care. It's really self-leadership. It's really, you know.
It is. And by making yourself better, you raise your lid. You know, there's another John Maxwell book that he's written called 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And the very first law is the law of the lid. And that says that you are only able to be as good to others as your lid. And
Yeah.
so important for us. If we want to do the best that we can for other people, we have to be the best versions of ourselves that we can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's deliberate. It has to take, you have to put in effort and work on it. And so I want to get to that. And at the end, I have just some ideas for you and for the group of organizations or groups or books or just things like that people can do to help make themselves grow. Because you never know what the growth, you never know exactly what you need to grow. I'll tell you, I've got 5 half-read books right now. And I'll read them until I don't feel like they're doing a thing for me anymore. And then I'll find the next one.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but the important thing is that you at least pick it up and you open it and you start.
Yeah. What I love, what I want to say to that is that, yeah, I think a lot of us personal development, but here's what you were saying earlier, back to what you said earlier, is that somebody might, how many times have we heard things? Like we heard it years ago, but we couldn't assimilate it in our life, or we didn't hear it the way we're hearing it now. We didn't see we didn't make the connection because we really weren't ready for it, right?
Yep.
It's like talking to a toddler about a driver's license. They're like, car,
Yeah.
right? But you talk to a teenager about getting a driver's license and a car, they're all about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you start talking to a teenager about a mortgage, they're like, what?
Nope, not ready for it. Yep.
Right, it's all in our awareness, right? And how we're all kind of going on the journey, and so it's like, hey, oh wow, I'm ready to receive this, right? It's like, because you can't go from kindergarten to college, you have to have some teachings along the way, or else you don't even, you're like, what are they talking about? My thoughts create my feelings. That's just nonsense,
Yeah.
But then when you finally get it, you're like, oh, now I see.
Yep, I agree. And again, I just want to reiterate, to everybody, be okay with being okay at something. If this isn't a thing that you've gotten, that you don't have you don't have a book schedule laid out, or you don't have a personal growth plan for yourself, be okay with being okay, because we're all perfectly imperfect. And number 2, just take a step. You don't need to sit down and write out a personal growth plan on your first day. Just pick up a book. Pick up the easiest book. One of the books that we have in the bedroom that's partially read is the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. That's a great series. The Chicken Soup for the Soul is a great series. It's just little things that help you to just consistently be present in kind of what's going on in your life. And so the first lesson that I want to share with you, that I'm excited to share these are just little snips of the actual full program. But I purposely went through and picked some that I think are really applicable for what we're talking about. And I want to share a little bit of it's about a 5-minute clip of John Maxwell. John Maxwell presents, he does some of the teaching that's basically part of the backbone of this Leading Through Crisis program. So if I could, Coach Judy, I'm going to kick it over to John Maxwell and share him on my screen. And then I think everybody should be able to see and hear that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And then just if you could let me know that you can actually hear it once I start it here. So you should be able to see the screen now. And
there we go.
Okay, good.
All right, perspective number 6. Realize that motions influence emotions. Dr. George W. Crane, great psychologist, said in his famous book, Applied Psychology, he said these words: remember, motions are precursors of emotions. Now, emotions you and I can't control, but emotions we can control. And so Dr. Crane, this was very helpful to me. About 20 years ago, I came across his teaching and his writing. And Dr. Crane had this tremendous statement I give to you right now. Just write it down, mark it down, it's going to help you. He said, if I feel, which is emotions, then I will, which is actions. Now, put them together. Dr. Crane says, if I feel something emotionally, then I will. I'll take action. I'll take action. So if I feel depressed, what will I do? I will sing. If I feel sad, I will laugh. If I feel fear, I will express faith. If I feel poverty, I will think of wealth to come. If I feel incompetent, I'll remember past successes. If I feel insignificant, I will remember my dreams. He said, today I will master my emotions. So here's the question. What am I doing right now to turn my negative emotions into positive actions? For example, one of the things I'm doing is I'm teaching this lesson. I have found that by teaching this lesson to you, it's a positive action that helps me cope with the crisis that we're in. Here's what I want you to know. Recovery time during adversity separates those who turn adversity into advantage. Let me explain. Recovery time, the time I recover from depression or anxiety or discouragement to a positive action, that recovery time is determined by how long it takes me to take positive action on negative emotions. If you have negative emotions, the quicker you take positive action on that negativity, the quicker you will recover. You see, again, as I've shared in previous lessons, a crisis never leaves us the same. It doesn't. Because during that crisis, we keep saying, boy, I can hardly wait to get back to normal. Oh my gosh, I can hardly wait. And we have a strong desire for normal. And what I want you to realize is that normal has changed. And normal's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. Ask kids who right now are taking online courses because they can't go to their school. Ask people who are working at home right now online. Normal isn't going to be the same. And Max Dupree said the first responsibility of any leader is to define reality. And the reality is that we are going through massive change, and normal, as we know it, is gone. If the first responsibility as a leader is for me to define reality to you, my second responsibility to you is to help you make those positive changes so that you can get through this crisis. I've been through a lot of them, trust me. Wow. In the 1960s, I saw leaders, John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King. I saw them assassinated. In the 70s, I grew up in that Vietnam era. I mean, in the most troubled decade of all. And I saw the disillusionment of people that saw that they were manipulated and that there was a war that probably should have never, ever begun. And in the 1980s, we saw AIDS come, and then an economic recession was in the 1980s. In the 1990s, corporate wrongdoing, Enron, and companies were beginning to be unethical. Well, 9/11 happened. I've been through that crisis. I was through the 2008 recession. And here's what I've noticed about bad times and crisis is that when things are out of control in a negative way, the best thing I can do is help people get control of their lives. And how do I do that? In fact, it was out of the 2008-9 recession economically that I began to ask, how do I help people get back control of their lives? And that was catalytic for me to start the John Maxwell team.
So I really like how John covers this idea of your emotions and the attachment to action, that idea of action, right? Emotions in your life and action and how it's connected to your emotions. Before we get into the emotional stuff, because I definitely want to dial into that a little bit, because there's really, really important lessons in that. But to cage that up, I just want you to ask yourselves, like I have had the opportunity now to reflect on, is think of all the crisis events you've been through. I mean, he just mentioned a few of them, and a lot of you listening, and a lot of us have maybe experienced some of those, but those are global crises. Think about the personal crisis that you've been through, and then ask yourself, looking back on it, is it worse looking back on it than it was while you were in the middle of going through it? Or did it feel worse while you were in the middle of it? And I think it's just really important for us to have that perspective. If you remember way back in the beginning, I said perspective is a thing that we're going to come back and talk about a little bit more. But I want us to think about that. So the crisis that we're going through right now, is it really the worst that it's ever been for us? Or does it just feel that way because we're in it? Right?
Yeah, I think there's two parts there, right? So the one part is we're in it, so it feels it has it, and it has a whole different experience because we don't really know what's on the other side. We don't know when we're going to get to the other side. We don't know, but there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's usually what happens in a crisis. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yep.
Even though we really didn't have any certainty, we kind of just thought we did.
Right.
We just thought we were certain, but now, guess what? We're really certain now that we have uncertainty. We're certain we have uncertainty.
That's right. We're actually more certain.
We're more certain. Exactly. We're more certain. And then, interesting, because you're a coach as well, but, it's like, so many people come to me, they don't come to a life and leadership coach when life is going great. They're
right.
like, they come to me like when their husband has left them, and when their husband, their child died and they're grieving, they lost their job, they want to, something happened with their kids, like they're having a crisis. Like that's who I work with, is somebody's having a crisis because they're trying to get through it.
Right.
Trying to figure out how to get to the other side with some sort of grace and dignity and mental and emotional stability, right? But the challenge is we're going through a global crisis, right? And I love what you said, like you can look back, and I do this a lot with my clients, help them look back at all the things that they've overcome, all the challenges that they've already done, all of the things they've survived. We've survived our life 100% so far. Doesn't mean that we've all survived it well, but we've survived it, right? And I think it's so valuable to just, like you say, to just reflect on that a little bit.
It is, and that brings up to me. It brings up to me the fact that, and now listen, I'm a big believer in that. Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I really am a big believer in that. I do believe that we're able to kind of somewhat kind of scope our environment and shape our environment based on our attitude and based on our mindset and our mindfulness of things. I really believe that.
You know what I call them? I call them perspectacles.
That's excellent. That's
It's
brilliant.
like,
yeah.
we have to put on the perspectacle, the different perspective. It's like, you've been wearing those glasses for 50 years. Like,
Yeah.
put on some new perspective.
Get a new perspective. That is fantastic, Coach.
And, so you got that. And then, when you just said, Dr. Wayne Dyer, right? Oh yeah, he's, I have a whole story about him coming and visiting me after he died. If you really want to get into that, that was pretty fascinating.
Wow. That sounds interesting, yeah.
Right, so yeah, and the whole concept of perspective and perspectacles, we can laugh about it, but it's true, is that, what I help people see is we can't change anything that happened in your past. We can't change anything anybody did to you, anything anybody said. We can't change anything that you did or said. But we can change the meaning we're giving it. We can change our perspective, like change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's like, that was mind blowing for me when I was like,
that's right.
Because we go back to the thoughts and the feelings and the actions, because if you're changing how you're thinking about it, if you're like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but if you're also like, wow, what lessons can I learn? How can I work? What is the value in this? Or what am I learning about my lifestyle or my thing in this crisis that I want to change or shift? Yeah.
I think, to me, the thing to be mindful of, and here's a lesson. If you're taking notes, this is a good one to write down, I think, because we know, just to what you just talked about, Coach Judy, we can change our perspective on things, but good things and bad things are going to happen in our lives. No matter, you cannot, I am all for a positive mindset, but you can't positive mindset things to only have good things happen to you in your life. There's still bad things that will happen. So good and bad things are going to happen to us. But what I do know is I know that our life stance is really what helps us have the right perspective. Because here's a fact. If you have a positive life stance and you choose a positive life stance, because that's a thing you can choose. It's not always easy to choose, but it can be chosen. If you're not sure of that, ask Viktor Frankl, who was a prisoner in the concentration camps, who maintain a positive, perspective on life in the worst of scenarios. You can choose this, but if you choose a positive life stance, the good and the bad things that are going to happen to you always improve. They always get better if you have a positive life stance. If you have a negative life stance, 100% of the opposite is true. If you have a negative life stance, good and bad things are going to happen to you. But guess what? Those good and bad things are both going to get worse. Yeah. And I would like for everybody, kind of listening to this, just to really kind of think of that. Take that note down, put that somewhere that's mindful to you, because making sure that you're doing your very best to choose a positive perspective on a thing really is going to make all the stuff, good and bad, improve. So to share that. Now I've got another little bit of a section here on making today matter. I'm not sure where we're at for time though, Coach Judy. So
we've got half an hour. We're halfway. Okay, good.
So before we do though, I want to get back into talking about this emotion, this idea of emotions. And I'm sure you've heard of the think, feel, act cycle, right? But
a lot of people watching and listening might never have heard that.
Okay, so for those of you who may not be familiar with it, just picture a circle, an image of a circle with some arrows and the three words, the word think with an arrow to the word feel with an arrow to the word act, to the word think, feel, act. So it's you just muted, Judy.
I have no idea you were going to talk about that, but look, circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results, because excellent. I teach this as well. So funny, right? It's like, yeah, because this is the everything.
This is the foundation.
The emotions, the feelings, the thought. This is the perspective. It's everything. It's right. So anyway, kind of funny.
That's it. Well, or yeah, coincidence or not, I'm not sure, but
there was definitely like divine intervention there.
So here's this is the part I love about this kind of this thinking, feeling, acting, right? Because John's talking about, he says, change your motion to change your emotions. And that's true. That can work. What you do physically can influence your emotions. But here's what we always do. And if you think about this with me, it's kind of comical. When my wife gets upset about a thing, she gets all worked up about a thing. It rarely happens, but occasionally if it did, what's the first thing I say to her? Calm down. Or relax. Or what's the first thing we do when somebody is in an emotional state? We tell them to change their emotions. I want you right now, raise your hand if you're out there. And I know I don't need to see you live to know that none of you are going to be raising your hand. I don't know anybody who can effectively actually change their emotion. What we do is we change our actions or our thoughts that ultimately end up changing our emotion. So the way I've heard this taught is, if you want to change the way you feel, or eventually if you want to change your results, you're changing the way you think, which changes the way you feel, which changes the way you act. So that's the think, feel, act cycle. Now, it's not just a linear thing. Most of the time, many times it is, but actions can have a backwards influence on your feelings, can't they? I mean, so put yourself in that situation. So I'm going to share something kind of personal right now, and I'll just apologize ahead of time if I have to pause for a second here and there, because this is a real situation that's going on in our family right now. My mother was an unquestionably solid person in my life. I mean, I had a phenomenal childhood looking back. She was involved in everything we did. She was at all the sporting events. She was not only involved, she was at them. She was a coach, or she was really a great parent. I mean, she was fantastic. Now she had her quirks, like all of us do, but we had tremendous childhoods, and not everybody can say that. So I really am grateful for that. Well, just recently, back in December, my mom retired, and she retired from a nearly 40-year career as an executive assistant at a high school. And on top of retiring, she just recently, about 10 years ago, she had gone through cancer treatments. 10 years, 15 years prior to that, her mother had died from cancer twice. Really, it was horrible to watch my grandmother go all the way through cancer treatments to the point where she was near death and then recover. to only go through cancer a second time and actually end up succumbing to it that time. But, you know, rewind back even further than that in my mom's life. And she was 24 years old. I was 2, and she was pregnant with my sister when my father was killed in a farming accident. And so, you know, you look back and then you go rewind back into her childhood and talk about some of the childhood trauma that many people in her generation dealt with, just with family kind of dynamics and situations that were going on. And so my mom has been, although a tremendous mother for us, has had a really tough life. Well, this last December when she retired, a lot of pent up stuff kind of came crashing down on her. And it's a really scary thing to hear your mom call you sobbing, because that's never happened, and talk about how she just wants it to all be over. She just wants to take all the pills and just not get up in the morning because she can't see a way to have a better life or to have a future. And when you watch that happen, it triggers a lot of emotions. You know, and so I was on a plane. So I'm happy to say that she's still with us. We have a support system in our family, and we kind of came together and intervened. And I ended up flying up to New York, you know, in the beginning of January. And they were planning to. They retired. My mom and dad are both retired. They have a house in New Smyrna Beach, so they were planning on coming to Florida anyway. So then this whole thing was going on. She was hospitalized for about 10 days. You know, because of this going on. She's on some medication now, but she's still really struggling. And the thing that is really interesting to me is you talk about resilience, Judy, and you talk about resilience being the thing that you work on when you're not in crisis. And that is just so important for everybody listening, because what we do, or what we have done in our family, is we pretend like we don't need to work on things. Pretend like everything's okay. And then in the minute of, and then in the moment of a crisis, the tools and the techniques and the tips and the, you know, the ingredients to your recipe for resilience aren't there because you haven't taken the time to build it. And so I wanted to share that kind of personal story with everybody, because this is a real opportunity for you. But I'll tell you, this is just like you teach your kids, or you were taught when you were a kid. You get out of it that which you put into it. So if you came into this video thinking, hey, you know what, I'm just going to watch it because I'm friends with Coach Judy, or I'm friends with, you know, Jason Roberts, and I just want to support them. If you came into it with that, well, then that's what you're going to get out of it. And we thank you for for pacifying us and being a part of our group. But on the other hand, what I'd really encourage you all to do is think into this. And if you just watched it to here, and you were like, wow, I wasn't watching it from the right perspective, just start it over and just watch it again with the perspective to get something out of it. Because I promise you there's something in what we just talked about for each of
you. So, because life is how it is, this is on my answering machine right now. I have no idea what that is. But anyway, we're going to keep moving.
Yeah.
Hang on one second.
That's okay. So what I'm going to do then, Coach Judy, is I'm going to get us kicked over to the next video that I want to share. And that's John Maxwell talking about Today Matters. And the reason I shared that story with my mom, the reason I shared that story about my mother is because today really does matter. And I want to share this next little snippet of John in the lesson on leading through crisis, where he talks about how important it is to make that count and make today count. So I'm gonna
Jason, go
ahead, Judy.
I want to honor your story and your mom and your family on that. So it was just kind of ironic that, like, I think it was some Holy Spirit coming into
it was
lightening up.
That's right.
Lightening up.
It was a good break. It was a good transition point there. So let me find the right thing here.
That's fine. But anyway, thank you for sharing that, and we'll get back to that after you let this.
Yeah. Let me. I got to get to the right time slot here. What do I have it at? 8:04. So. All right, so back over here to John Maxwell talking about Today Matters. And this next clip, it's about 2.5 or 3 minutes long.
positive difference in the lives of others.
Can you hear
Let's
me?
look at perspective. Wow, this is a good one.
Coach Judy, can
Perspective number 7, today matters. Make today count. I want you to think of this.
Okay.
Adversity is always filled with uncertainty. People are asking me things like, well, what about tomorrow? How long is this going to last? And, John, when are you going to start traveling again? When are you going to start speaking again? And, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know much about the future right now, but I'll tell you what I do know. I do know that if I today make today count, if I today say, I can't control tomorrow, but I can control what is in my hands right now, that will make a huge difference. I wrote a book several years ago called Make Today Count. And in that book, and I'm reading this to you now, I wrote these words, just for today. Just for today, I will choose and display the right attitude. Just for today, I will determine and act upon important priorities. Just for today, I will know and follow healthy guidelines. Just for today, I will communicate with and care for my family. Just for today, I will make and keep proper commitments. Just for today, I will earn and properly manage finances. Just for today, I will deepen and live out my faith. Just for today, I will initiate and invest in solid relationships. Just for today, I will embrace and practice good values. Just for today, I will seek to experience improvement in life. And at the end of all these just for the days, I said, just for today, I will act on these decisions and practice these disciplines. And then one day, I will see the compounding results of each day lived well. What I want you to see is this. If you are taking care of today, that'll help you with tomorrow. Because every day I'm either preparing, taking care of today so that tomorrow is going to turn out okay, or I'm repairing and going back and trying to fix what I didn't do right yesterday. I don't know about the future. Honestly, I don't. I don't know how long this crisis is going to go on. I don't know. But I do know one thing. If I just take care of today, if I just do the right things now, everything else will take care of itself. So let's review quickly. Perspective principles about adversity. 1, everything worthwhile is uphill. Number 2, there's always an answer. 3, allow adversity to help you discover who you really are. Number 4, develop a positive life stance. Number 5, feed your faith, starve your doubts. Number 6, realize that your emotions influence your emotions. Number 7, today matters.
All right. So that kind of wraps up the sneak peek of the actual some of the content and the training around, or the teaching around leading through crisis that I've got to share. But the part that I really grab onto in that last little section, I mean, there's a lot in there, but the part that really I grab onto is, and I want to make sure I share, is that we're either preparing or we're repairing, and we're going to put in the work somewhere. Like you're going to have to put in the emotional energy, the time energy, the money energy. You're going to put it somewhere, and you get to choose of whether you're putting it in on the prepare side or on the repair side. So that's a really important part to me. That
and I actually think I totally agree, and I actually think we're always doing both of that. Like, right, we're preparing, but we're also repairing. As we evolve, right, things come up for us. We have stories and traumas and woundings or the life lessons that we kind of didn't learn, whatever, right? The healing that sort of has to happen. And, so there's always a little bit of repairing in there.
And that repairing phase, and I think about this just based on the story about my mom I just shared.
Yeah.
We're in major repair land right now. We're in major repair land. And I just think to myself, like two things. Number one, how valuable is that of a lesson for me? And we've been very transparent with our children about it. They're 13 and 15, and they know that grandma has been suicidal. And it's even hard for me to say that because it's just so, it's so emotion invoking. But they know that grandma has had some really, really tough times. And the reason we're sharing it with them is because you can learn from other people's challenges. And so we're able to help our children prepare for tough times in their life by learning through a crisis situation with their grandmother. And, and so we're in major repair mode with her, and we're going to do that but it's just another piece of evidence that you're putting in the work somewhere. So you either put in the work as a result of the crisis after it, or you do it now. And so that's really, Coach Judy, what I kind of want to my comments, that, formatted comments that I have that I want to close with is that, yeah, we're in the middle of a crisis. Mm-hmm. So important for us to lead through that crisis, not just lead the people around us or lead the organization that we're a part of, or lead our church or our organization, or even lead our family, but most importantly, to lead ourselves. Because we are either preparing or repairing. And so much of an opportunity right now for us to prepare for the betterment that we can develop for following the crisis. It's not easy always to see, but I promise that's the way this is all going to turn out. Just like every other crisis that the world has known, we have come out better at the other end of it when it was over. And so always. I really do appreciate you spending 45 minutes with me. I'm happy to kind of talk a little bit longer, but it's really great, and this really is, it's valuable for me to share this stuff, but I mean, I'm right there learning along with everybody else, because in preparing, my notes and kind of doing some of my research, man, I just really value the opportunity that this has been for me. So thank you. Thank you for.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's always, like I said, we want to offer value, we want to offer tools, and we want to, show up and be of some, we have gone through things, we have learned stuff, we have become coaches because we really want to help other people on our path. But it's so true that people always like, oh, I love all your posts, on Facebook or Instagram. They're so inspiring. And I'm like, yeah, they're pep talks to myself.
Yeah.
Kind of what I needed to hear today. So that's what I posted. I mean, not always, but it is sometimes they're very reflective posts, because it's like, I need to really dive a little deeper into this. And like you were sharing about your mom, and I'm really sorry that she was going through that. But like you said, she never processed so much of that stuff. And then now she's at this place in her life, and it's like, she was right. And she had certain expectations of what was going to be. And we're always disappointed when we don't have the expectations. And yeah, she's very resilient because she survived a lot of things.
Right.
But sometimes it's kind of like, you just feel like, I think what you're giving her, it feels like hope. Yep. Right? Because when people don't have hope, they feel hopeless, and then they don't feel like they can move forward. So what I really love is I see this sense of hope that, like, you know what, maybe it doesn't look exactly like what you thought it was going to look like, but again, perspectacles.
Yep.
You got to get her some perspecticles. That's what she needs.
I think so.
You should get her some crazy, like, your kids should decorate something. You're like, Mom, these are your, what did you call it? Positive stance, your positive stance perspecticles.
That's a great idea. I'm making.
You have to wear them once a day.
You might be onto something there.
Anyway, I think I'm gonna start marketing those perspectives.
Yeah.
Because it's like everything, right? Whatever we're going through here, like, we all have our own perspective, because we all have our own, baggage that we come with it, our own experience, our own, and our own current circumstance, right? Our own current.
I wanted to catch this real fast.
Yeah.
Susie, you want to mute yourself a second? So, but yeah, we all have our own, circumstance too. Like, some people are out of work, and some people have lost their jobs, and some people have different things, But I remember back in the day, my husband worked for an airline. They filed bankruptcy. We had to sell our house and move and schlep around the country looking for other airline jobs and different things. And, the whole airline industry was having a crisis, but other people were like living, they had no idea what I was going through, what we were going through, right? It's just like, so for you, your mom is having this crisis in the middle of a crisis, and it's really challenging to you for you to even be there with her and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So again,
Well, and it just goes to show you everybody does have their own story. And here's the takeaway, right? Is all of these principles, they're not all applicable to every person on every day. But I can tell you that there are certain things that are fundamental. I mean, it's no mistake. I mean, it really wasn't pre-planned, but it's no mistake that you and I are working off of some of the same playbook, because it's some of it is really fundamental. And so again, I'm really happy that that I got a chance to be a part of this group. And I encourage. I've got my Facebook page. I do the same thing, Coach Judy. I put out my my thoughts of the day. Not every day, but they're important to me. I do, and I'm happy to have people jump in and share that. The one thing I did want to leave with, though, before I go, is don't just. I mean, this is one platform. This is one. Literally hundreds. Here's what I would recommend everybody does. First of all, find stuff where people are just trying to add value to you first. There comes a point where there is oftentimes a requirement. It's really, money is a trade of value, right? It's a trade of recognizing the value of some person's time. And there's a time where money becomes an important part of a transaction of trading value from one person to another. The other thing it does, it puts some skin in the fight, for a person, so that they have some ownership to that process. But if you're thinking that the first thing you got to do is go out and drop hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on a program just as the beginning stage, I encourage you to just second guess that one. But find Coach Judy out there. Find groups I'm a part of. There's a group I'm a part of called the Empowered Living Community, which is a fantastic group of really great people. There's the John Maxwell team. There's just literally hundreds of opportunities out there, and I'm happy to help people connect with something that they find helpful. And I know, Coach Judy, you've got massive amounts of resources out there. So, if you're not taking some action, you need to reconsider the importance of taking some action. So work first and longest and hardest on yourself. And the way you do that is by figuring out how you're going to grow personally. So
yeah, and I love that. That's just a great way to kind of wrap this up. And a reminder of kind of how we started this was this creating a recipe for your remarkable resilience. And we've talked about getting a new perspective. We talked about your managing your thoughts and getting in motion, and some of the things that John Maxwell talked about. And, this idea of, having this, like I said, this recipe box of things that you can do and implement and trying them on and just seeing how they fit for you, right? Reading books, even if you got 5 half-read books on your nightstand, I have a couple too that I'm like, I started reading, I'm like, wait, I'm gonna read this one too, and then I go back and forth because I'm like, is this resonating with me right now?
That's right.
Wait, this is really resonating with me, and this, defining reality. I liked what John Maxwell talked about, really defining reality, because we have our perspectives on, and our reality is actually like, it's only our, like there's personal reality, and then there's like this generalized reality. So and then I love really how you're like telling people to calm down and just like just calm down, it'll be fine. Like
so effective.
Your nervous system, and this is going to be great because we're leading into the next thing with Hazel McRae, and she is a counselor and therapist, and we're going to be talking all about anxiety and resilience, and how having a flexible nervous system, right? Which is sort of really what we're talking about, is how do we navigate the preparing and the repairing and the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings and the actions and all of that, and it's so powerful. And honestly, I'm just going to end it with just for today, right? If I'm just taking care of today.
Just for today, I'm going to make this choice. Just for today, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this action. Yep.
Just for today, I'm just going to keep figuring this technology out because something happened early on. So, but you know what? We were all in the right energy. We were all in the mindset. We were all prepared.
Yep.
And I thought, we'll just figure it out and we'll go. And it won't look at like your mom. Your mom had a different idea of what she thought retirement was going to be and all of that, right? And then it's just different. And it's like, well, I had a vision of what I thought this was going to look like, and it's just different.
Different.
But you know what? We're still creating value in the world, and we're still, and like you say, you put value out, it comes back somewhere, somehow. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But you know what? It looks a little different than what I thought it was going to look like. But I got my perspectives on, and I'm good to go.
That's awesome. I love it.
All right. Thank you for giving
much.
up your Saturday and for being flexible.
No, it's great. It was great. Figuratively flexible, right?
Yes, right. We're
I got to go watch the yoga segment here now, because that's definitely something I need to work on.
Yeah, we all got to move here a little bit, but anyway, thank you so much. And
yes, ma'am.
we'll be in touch. And really quickly too, I tried to get people that were local for this. I mean, I know people all over the world. Tried to get people that were local to where I live, only because eventually we're going to go back out into the world together. I don't know when, but I just felt like, who knows, maybe there is something. We created a little group. We could create just something. Yeah,
kind of keep it going.
I have no idea what's going to come from it, and we got Hazel because Patricia couldn't come, but Hazel's awesome too. She just happens to be in Texas. So,
I look forward to seeing this all as you kind of piece it together and being able to kind of watch it in its holistic way, because I think that's a brilliant idea to piece it all together the way that you're doing it, with the focus areas that you've identified of your physical, wellness, your mindset wellness, your emotional wellness. I think that's just, I think your nutritional wellness, I think that's all excellent. So I appreciate it. Thanks again.
All right. Have an awesome day. Enjoy this beautiful, but enjoy your family, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, Coach Judy. Bye-bye.
Bye.